The alarms began screaming 7 seconds before the containment glass exploded. Cadets all across Tactical Hall 9 froze mid-conversation as crimson emergency lights flooded the chamber in violent pulses. The sound alone was enough to send fear ripping through the room. Every species in the Galactic Coalition recognized that alarm. It was not a fire warning. It was not a decompression alert. It was a predator breach signal. 300 cadets turned toward the reinforced observation pit below the lecture platform, and for one strange moment, the entire academy became perfectly silent. Even the insectoid students stopped clicking their mandibles. Even the towering Brakari warriors instinctively stepped backward. Fear moved through the chamber like electricity because inside the pit, something enormous was standing completely still in the darkness, watching them. Elias Ward felt it before he fully saw it. A pressure in the air. A weight, like every instinct buried inside the human nervous system, suddenly whispering that something ancient was nearby. Then the lights flickered. The creature moved. Several cadets screamed immediately. One fainted before the emergency shields even activated. Another collapsed against the wall, muttering prayers in a language Elias did not recognize. Somewhere above him, an instructor shouted for everyone to remain calm, but panic was already spreading too fast. Chairs overturned. Data pads shattered across the floor. 2 avian cadets launched themselves toward the exits so violently they broke their own wing joints against the sealed security doors. And through all of it, the thing inside the containment pit never charged. It never roared. It never attacked. It simply stared. Elias finally got a clear look as the darkness shifted away from his body. The creature was easily 9 feet tall, wrapped in layers of black armored skin that reflected almost no light. Veins of dim silver pulsed beneath its surface like slow lightning trapped under obsidian glass. Its face was wrong in ways the human brain struggled to process. No visible eyes, no visible mouth, just smooth, armored plating and faint shifting fractures of blue light, where a face should have been. A Void Reaper, the single most feared species in known space. Official records blamed them for the destruction of 13 frontier colonies and the deaths of nearly 4 million civilians. Entire systems had collapsed after encounters with them. Fleets disappeared near their territories without distress calls. Children across the galaxy grew up hearing stories about what happened when the lights went dark and the Reapers came. Yet Elias noticed something nobody else did. The creature was terrified. Not angry, not violent. Terrified. Its massive body stayed low near the rear wall of the containment pit, while security cannons descended from the ceiling above it. The silver veins beneath its armor flickered erratically, almost like a racing heartbeat. Every time another alarm sounded, the creature flinched. That was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. Cadet Ward. The voice snapped through Elias' earpiece sharply. Step away from the containment rail immediately. He barely heard it, because the creature had suddenly turned toward him. The entire chamber seemed to tighten. Hundreds of cadets instinctively backed farther away from Elias, as if proximity alone might get them killed. A Brakari cadet, near him, whispered something trembling under his breath. It chose the human. Elias should have stepped back. Every survival instinct told him to move. Instead, he leaned closer to the glass. The creature slowly lifted one enormous hand toward the transparent barrier. Its claws scraped softly against the surface. Not attacking. Writing. At first Elias thought the marks were random, but then his pulse spiked violently. They were letters. Not Coalition standard. Human letters. For uneven symbols scratched carefully into the armored glass from the inside. HELP. The chamber erupted into chaos. Security drones dropped from the ceiling instantly. Instructors began screaming evacuation orders. Someone behind Elias shouted that the creature was attempting psychological manipulation, but Elias never moved, because the Void Reaper wasn't looking at the soldiers. It wasn't watching the drones. It was staring directly at him with something far more terrifying than rage burning beneath those shifting blue fractures. Recognition. And then, without warning, every light in Tactical Hall 9 went black. Darkness swallowed Tactical Hall 9, so completely that Elias could hear the panic before he could see it. The chamber erupted into overlapping screams. trampling footsteps, and distorted emergency broadcasts blasting through hidden speakers. Somewhere nearby, a cadet was crying uncontrollably. Another was shouting that the Void Reaper had breached containment. The security shutter slammed down over every exit with deafening force, sealing hundreds of cadets inside the lecture hall together. Then came the sound that froze the entire room. A low metallic growl, not from the creature, from the security cannons powering up. Thin red targeting lasers pierced through the darkness one by one, sweeping across the chamber like hunting eyes. The Academy's automated defense system had activated lethal response protocol. Elias' stomach tightened immediately because the lasers were not only aimed at the containment pit anymore, they were tracking movement everywhere, including cadets. "Remain still," the artificial security voice announced coldly. "Biological threat assessment in progress." A terrified student bolted toward the emergency staircase. The cannons fired instantly. The sonic blast hit the wall inches from the fleeing cadet, vaporizing half the staircase in a burst of molten metal. Heat rolled across the chamber. Screams intensified. Cadets dropped to the floor in terror. Elias gripped the containment rail harder. This was no longer about controlling a monster. This was containment through fear. The light suddenly returned in violent flashes, and the first thing Elias saw was the Void Reaper still standing exactly where it had been before the blackout. It had not moved, not even an inch. Its massive body remained crouched low near the rear wall, silver veins pulsing rapidly beneath black armor. The scratched word help still glared across the reinforced glass between them. Yet something else had changed. The creature was staring upward now, at the security cannons. And for the first time since the breach alarm started, Elias saw unmistakable hatred ripple through the silver light beneath its skin, not toward the cadets, toward the machines. Containment integrity restored, the system announced. Professor Kepler stumbled onto the lecture platform, breathing hard. The elderly instructors for mechanical spine arms twitched erratically behind his robes as he tried to regain control of the room. "No one approaches the glass," he barked. "Nobody speaks to the entity. Tactical suppression teams are already inbound." Entity, not creature. Elias noticed the change immediately. So did the Void Reaper. The silver light beneath its armor dimmed slightly, as if it understood every word being spoken. That should not have been possible. Around Elias, the cadets slowly rose from the floor. Fear still dominated the chamber, but now another emotion was spreading beneath it. Confusion. Because everyone had seen the writing. Help. Human language. Human letters. A tall Veari cadet pointed one trembling claw toward the glass. "It copied symbols from his records," she insisted loudly, almost desperately. "Predators mimic behavior. That's all this is." Nobody answered her, because nobody really believed it. Elias kept replaying the moment in his mind. The movement had been too deliberate, too careful. The creature had not scratched randomly until something recognizable appeared. It had written with intention, like someone trying to communicate across impossible distance. Professor Kepler activated a hollow screen above the pit. Instantly, official military footage filled the chamber. Burning colonies, wrecked ships drifting through debris fields, dead civilians lined across frozen streets beneath dark skies. "Remember what the species is responsible for," the professor said sharply. "Void Reapers are not misunderstood animals. They are apex exterminators. Entire systems have collapsed because of them." The images changed again. Security recordings showed towering black figures tearing through armored soldiers with horrifying speed. Ships exploded. Buildings collapsed. Alien civilians ran screaming through smoke-filled streets. Yet something about the footage bothered Elias immediately. Every clip was short, fragmented, always beginning after the violence had already started. Never before. And suddenly he understood why his instincts refused to align with everyone else's fear. The footage showed destruction, but it showed no motive. The realization hit him hard enough that he almost missed the next moment entirely. The Void Reaper slowly turned its head toward him again. Blue fractures shifted softly across its faceless armor. Then the chamber speakers crackled. Static flooded the room. A deep, distorted sound emerged through the interference. Not a growl. Not animal noise. Breathing. Heavy. Controlled. And beneath it came a voice so faint Elias almost thought he imagined it. "Don't." The entire room froze. Professor Kaler went pale instantly. The speakers exploded into static again before the word could finish. Cadets erupted into terrified shouting. Several demanded immediate execution of the creature. Others backed farther away from the containment pit. One cadet began hysterically repeating that Void Reapers could infect minds. But Elias no longer heard them clearly, because Professor Kaler looked afraid. Not the fear of a man facing danger. The fear of a man watching a secret escape containment. Security doors burst open seconds later as armored suppression teams flooded into the chamber carrying military-grade pulse rifles. Their commander didn't even glance at the cadets before marching directly toward the containment controls. "Memory scrub protocol authorized," he announced. Elias blinked. "What?" The commander ignored him completely. "All cadets present during the breach will undergo neural review. No discussion of this incident leaves Tactical Hall 9. The chamber went silent again. That was when Elias finally understood the truth. The Academy was not afraid the creature would escape. They were afraid it would speak. By morning, Tactical Hall 9 no longer officially existed. Every mention of the incident had vanished from the Academy network before the first cycle bell rang. Elias discovered that when he tried accessing the lecture archive from his quarters and received a cold automated response stating the session had been canceled due to a system's malfunction. Even the names of cadets present during the breach had been temporarily locked behind military clearance. That alone would have been enough to terrify most students. But what unsettled Elias more was how everyone behaved afterward. Nobody talked about it, not openly. The corridors of the Academy remained crowded as always, filled with hundreds of species moving between towering observation decks and gravity bridges suspended above the station's artificial oceans. Conversations buzzed everywhere around him, yet every time Elias approached the group, voices dropped instantly. Alien cadets looked away too quickly. Some stared at him with suspicion. Now, instead of fear, the human, the one the Void Reaper chose. Rumors spread faster than official statements ever could. By midday, Elias had already heard 6 different versions of what happened inside Tactical Hall 9. In one version, the creature had tried to psychically bond with him. In another, it had recognized humanity as fellow predators. One particularly ridiculous theory claimed humans had secretly created the Reapers during ancient wars. But beneath all of them lingered the same question. Why had it written in human language? Elias still did not have an answer, and that bothered him more than he wanted to admit. He sat alone inside the Eastern Observation Ring late that night, staring out at the endless star field surrounding Kepler Station. The station drifted between 3 contested systems near Coalition frontier space, far enough from civilization that the darkness outside felt almost alive. Cargo fleets passed occasionally beneath the observation glass, like distant glowing insects. Usually the stars calmed him. Tonight, they only deepened the feeling that something enormous was hiding just beneath the surface of everything he thought he understood. "You're either incredibly brave," a voice said quietly behind him, "or catastrophically stupid." Elias turned sharply. Professor Saran stood near the entrance archway with her hands folded behind her back. Unlike most Academy faculty, the Xenolinguist never wore ceremonial robes. Her dark uniform carried no rank markings, only thin silver symbols stitched along the collar in forgotten dialects from extinct species. People called her strange, even by Academy standards. Right now, Elias understood why. "You've been looking for me," he said carefully. "No," Saran replied. "I've been deciding whether speaking to you is worth the risk." That immediately raised his pulse. She approached slowly, her expression unreadable beneath the pale blue glow of the observation ring. "You saw something inside Tactical Hall 9 that should not exist," she continued. "And now Command is trying to erase it before anyone asks the wrong questions. You know about the word." "I know far more than that." Elias studied her carefully. "Then tell me what that thing really is." Saran was silent for several seconds, not hesitant, measured, as if choosing which truths were survivable. 34 years ago, she finally said, Coalition explorers discovered an abandoned station near the Perseus Drift. No life signs, no weapons fire, no damage to the hull. Yet every living being aboard was dead. Elias frowned slightly. I know the story. You know the public version. Her voice hardened. What they did not release was what investigators found afterward. The stars outside the observation glass suddenly felt colder. Saran activated a small hollow projector between them. Grainy footage flickered into existence above her palm. Elias immediately recognized military armor and coalition insignias, a recovery team moving carefully through dark corridors. Then the bodies appeared. Dozens of them, not torn apart, not mutilated, curled together against the walls like frightened children. There were no signs of combat, Saran said softly. No defensive wounds, no toxins, no biological infection. Every victim died from catastrophic neural collapse caused by prolonged terror. Elias stared at the footage. What caused it? That was the question. The video shifted. A shadow appeared briefly at the end of one corridor. Massive, black, watching. Elias felt his chest tighten. A Void Reaper? He whispered. Saran nodded slowly. According to official reports, yes. The Coalition concluded the species weaponized fear itself. But you don't believe that. No, her eyes narrowed slightly, because the footage was edited. Elias looked back at her sharply. The original recordings contained audio. Saran continued. Voices. Repeated attempts at communication from the entity before the station personnel panicked. Her expression darkened. The recordings were sealed immediately afterward. Everyone involved disappeared from public assignment records within the year. Something heavy settled in Elias' stomach. You're saying they knew? I'm saying someone decided it was safer if the galaxy feared them. Before Elias could respond, Saran stepped closer and lowered her voice. There's something else you need to understand. Yesterday was not the first time a Void Reaper used human language. His blood ran cold. What? Saran hesitated for the first time since arriving. Then she spoke very carefully. 2 centuries ago, during humanity's first expansion into frontier space, several deep-range colony ships vanished near the Perseus Drift. She watched his reaction closely. One vessel returned. Elias frowned. I've never heard of that mission. You were never supposed to. Her eyes locked onto his. Because when the survivors came home, they claimed something impossible. The observation ring lights dimmed slightly as the station entered night cycle mode. Outside, the stars seemed endless, predatory. What did they claim? Elias asked quietly. Saran's answer came almost as a whisper. They said the monsters saved them. Before Elias could process the words, every hollow screen across the observation ring suddenly activated at once. Emergency alert. Coalition military insignia flooded every display. Then came the announcement that made the entire station fall silent. Attention all Academy personnel. Effective immediately. Tactical Hall 9 has been placed under maximum quarantine status following the disappearance of one contained Void Reaper entity. The Academy descended into controlled panic within 11 minutes of the announcement. Kepler Station had been designed to withstand pirate sieges, reactor breaches, even localized warfare between coalition species. Elias had seen emergency drills before. Calm voices, organized movement, predictable procedure. This was different. This was fear. Massive blast doors slammed shut across entire sectors, while armed security units flooded the station corridors with military precision. Transport rails halted mid-transit. Observation decks sealed automatically. Every public screen repeated the same warning over and over in cold mechanical tones. Remain inside designated safe zones. Report any signs of psychological contamination immediately. Psychological contamination, not physical threat, not biological hazard. The wording itself chilled Elias more than the quarantine. Students crowded inside common halls whispering rumors in terrified voices, while Academy staff confiscated personal recordings and data devices one sector at a time. Elias watched instructors he had known for months suddenly avoid eye contact whenever Tactical Hall 9 was mentioned. The Academy was not trying to stop panic anymore. It was trying to control information. And somewhere inside the station, a Void Reaper had disappeared. Elias moved quickly through the lower transit corridors, keeping his head down beneath the flickering emergency lights. The station's artificial gravity hummed unevenly now, creating faint vibrations beneath the metal floor. Security drones swept overhead every few minutes, their scanners pulsing through the corridors like searching eyes. Professor Saran walked beside him without speaking. Only when they reached an abandoned maintenance bridge overlooking the station's reactor core did she finally stop moving. "You should leave the academy," she said immediately. Elias stared at her. "You dragged me halfway across the station to tell me to run?" "I brought you here because this is one of the few places not actively monitored." That caught his attention instantly. Saran activated a portable signal jammer from inside her coat. The low electronic hum around them deepened. "Listen carefully," she said. "The creature did not escape containment." Elias frowned. "Then where is it?" Her silence answered him before her words did. "They moved it." A cold wave crawled down his spine. Why would they lie about a breach? Because panic creates justification. Saran folded her arms tightly. The Coalition has wanted expanded military authority near frontier systems for decades. A loose Void Reaper inside Kepler Station gives them exactly the excuse they need. Elias replayed the announcement in his head. The speed, the lockdown, the rehearsed language. It had all happened too smoothly. They planned this, he realized quietly. "Not the communication attempt," Saran replied. That part terrified them. But once it happened, they adapted quickly. Before Elias could respond, heavy footsteps echoed from the far corridor entrance. Both of them turned instantly. 3 figures emerged from the shadows. Cadets. Elias recognized them immediately. Tarn, the massive Brakari combat trainee, whose species rarely trusted outsiders. Lyra Van, a sharp-eyed navigation specialist from the outer colonies. And Kalis, a thin, silver-skinned tactical analyst who looked nervous even standing there. "You followed me?" Elias asked. "Not difficult," Lyra answered. "Half the station thinks you're either cursed or chosen." Tarn crossed his enormous arms. "We came because security teams are arresting students." Elias blinked. "What?" Kalis swallowed hard. "Anyone who witnessed the incident too closely is being isolated for neural evaluation." That translated to interrogation, possibly memory alteration. Saran looked genuinely alarmed for the first time. "How many?" 37 so far, Lyra said quietly. "More every hour." Elias felt anger building beneath his confusion now. Not fear, anger. Because innocent cadets were disappearing simply for seeing something the Coalition could not explain. Tarn stepped closer, lowering his voice. "There's more." He activated a stolen military datapad. A hollow image flickered above it instantly. Burning wreckage, collapsed buildings, dead civilians. Official footage from a frontier colony attack. Except this version was different. Timestamps ran continuously instead of cutting between scenes. The recording showed armed Coalition soldiers firing first into darkness outside the colony perimeter before the supposed Void Reaper attack even began. Then shapes emerged from the smoke, not charging civilians, retreating from explosions. Elias stared at the footage in disbelief. The creatures were running. They edited the public recordings. Lyra said grimly, "Every attack report follows the same pattern. Missing time segments, missing audio, missing context." Saran's face darkened further. "Where did you get this?" "Military archive relay." Kalis answered nervously. "Somebody inside command is leaking restricted files." The implications hit Elias instantly. Someone within the Coalition wanted the truth exposed. But why now? Before he could ask, the datapad suddenly flashed red. Incoming priority transmission. Tarn frowned and opened it. A distorted image appeared. Static covered most of the screen, but Elias immediately recognized Tactical Hall 9, the containment pit, and inside it stood the Void Reaper, alive, unrestrained. The recording timestamp showed it had been captured only minutes earlier. The creature slowly approached the camera. Silver light pulsed violently beneath its armor, while alarm screamed somewhere beyond the frame. Then the creature lifted one massive hand toward the lens. Not attacking. Warning. Behind it, Barely visible through the darkness, another shape moved, larger. The transmission ended instantly. Nobody spoke for several seconds, because they all understood the same terrifying possibility at the exact same time. The missing Void Reaper had never been alone. For several seconds, nobody on the maintenance bridge moved. The frozen final frame of the transmission still hovered above Tarn's datapad, casting pale, distorted light across their faces. The image of the second shape in the darkness remained blurry, almost impossible to define clearly, yet its scale alone made Elias' pulse pound harder. The first Void Reaper had been enormous. The silhouette behind it looked nearly twice the size. Kalis was the first to break the silence. "That has to be corrupted footage," he whispered quickly. "Maybe overlapping frames from another recording." "No," Saran said quietly. Her expression had changed completely. Not shock, recognition. Elias noticed it immediately. "You know what that was?" Saran hesitated. Outside the maintenance bridge, emergency sirens continued echoing through distant sectors of the station, while heavy security patrols thundered across upper corridors. Kepler Station sounded less like an academy now and more like a fortress preparing for siege. Finally, Saran looked directly at Elias. "There are stories," she said carefully. "Old frontier accounts buried so deeply most historians assumed they were invented." Her voice lowered slightly. "Stories about something the Coalition never officially encountered." Tarn frowned. "Another predator species?" "No," Saran's eyes darkened. "A command cast." The words settled heavily in the silence. Elias looked back toward the frozen image above the datapad. "You're saying the Reapers have leadership?" "Not leadership as we understand it." Saran deactivated the image abruptly. Ancient reports described larger entities coordinating evacuation routes during frontier collapses. Survivors claimed entire civilian populations vanished before Coalition bombardments arrived. Lyra blinked slowly. "Evacuation routes?" "That's impossible," Kalis snapped immediately. "Void Reapers destroy colonies." "According to Coalition history," Saran corrected sharply. Nobody argued after that, because the question hanging between them had become too large to ignore now. What if Coalition history itself had been engineered? Elias leaned back against the cold railing, thoughts colliding violently in his mind. Every official narrative he had grown up hearing suddenly felt unstable. Humanity's early years inside the Coalition had always been taught as a triumph story. Dangerous frontier predators. Savage unknown space. Civilization bringing order to chaos. But now, he kept remembering the footage Tarn had shown them. The monsters retreating while Coalition soldiers opened fire first. And the thing that haunted him most was not the violence. It was the fear. The Void Reaper inside Tactical Hall 9 had looked afraid long before anyone else panicked, as if it already knew what the Coalition would do. A sudden metallic screech echoed through the bridge. All four cadets spun instantly. The station lights flickered violently overhead before stabilizing again. For half a second, Elias thought another emergency alert was coming. Instead, every hollow screen across the maintenance sector activated simultaneously. A live military broadcast filled the displays. Coalition Admiral Rivos appeared towering above rows of military insignias, his pale armored features rigid with controlled authority. Elias recognized him instantly. Supreme Commander of Frontier Security Operations, one of the most powerful figures in Coalition space. "Citizens of Kepler Station," the Admiral announced calmly. "Earlier today, Coalition forces confirmed the presence of multiple hostile Void Reaper entities operating within restricted Academy sectors." The wording hit Elias immediately. Not discovered. Confirmed, as if they had expected them. "We are initiating full containment operations," Rivos continued. "All non-essential personnel are ordered to remain inside secured zones while military forces neutralize the threat." Behind the Admiral, military footage began playing. Explosions, dark figures, screaming civilians. The same edited propaganda loops repeated endlessly. Fear packaged into doctrine. Then the Admiral spoke the sentence that changed everything. Evidence now indicates human cadet Elias Ward may have been psychologically compromised during contact with the entities. Every muscle in Elias' body tightened. The bridge went dead silent. Rivals continued speaking while Elias stared in disbelief. Citizens are advised that exposure to Void Reaper neurolinguistic manipulation can result in severe cognitive destabilization. Cadet Ward is considered a person of interest until proper examination is completed. He's making you the scapegoat, Lyra whispered. No, not scapegoat. Distraction. Elias understood the strategy immediately. If the public believed humans were vulnerable to manipulation, nobody would question why a Void Reaper used human language. Fear would erase curiosity before questions spread. Tarn cursed under his breath. They're weaponizing the panic. Saran looked grim. And now they have justification to arrest Elias publicly. As if summoned by the words, another alert suddenly flashed across every screen. Multiple security breaches detected. Lower detention sectors compromised. For one strange second, nobody reacted. Then the station shook. The impact rolled through Kepler Station with terrifying force. Lights burst overhead in showers of sparks, while the maintenance bridge lurched sideways violently enough to nearly throw Kalis off his feet. Another impact followed immediately after. Then another. Not explosions. Footsteps. Something massive was moving somewhere beneath the station. The hollow screens cut abruptly to static before emergency maps replaced the broadcast. Entire sectors near Tactical Hall 9 were flashing crimson now, and then Elias saw it. 3 containment sectors. Not 1, 3. His blood went cold. The Academy had never been holding a single captured Void Reaper. It had been imprisoning an entire group. Suddenly, the emergency speakers activated again, but this time the voice coming through was not automated. It was terrified. All military personnel retreat immediately from Sector 12. Someone screamed through static. They're not attacking us. The transmission ended in a burst of violent interference. Then came a sound Elias would remember for the rest of his life. Not a roar, not a threat. A deep resonating cry echoed upward through the station hull itself, powerful enough to vibrate the metal beneath their feet. And somehow, impossibly, Elias understood what everyone else missed. It was not a war cry. It was grief. The grief-filled cry rolled through Kepler Station again, deeper this time, resonating to the metal bones of the structure itself like a living earthquake. Every light along the maintenance bridge dimmed for half a second, as if the station's power grid had physically reacted to the sound. Then the screaming started. Not from civilians, from soldiers. Emergency channels flooded simultaneously with fragmented military transmissions. Elias could barely separate the voices through the static. Fall back. They're inside the reactor sectors. Do not fire near containment. We have wounded. And beneath all of it came something even stranger. Confusion. The security teams did not sound like forces under attack. They sounded like forces losing control of something they did not understand. Tarn grabbed the railing as another impact shuddered through the station. That thing down there could tear this place apart. No, Elias said quietly. Everyone looked at him. He wasn't even fully aware he had spoken until he saw their expressions. But deep inside, something felt horribly clear now. The cry had not carried rage. It had carried loss. And somehow his instincts trusted that more than every official warning surrounding them. A violent alarm suddenly erupted overhead. Reactor core access failure. Multiple security systems offline. Potential sabotage detected. Saran's eyes narrowed instantly. That's impossible. What? Lyra asked. The containment sectors are nowhere near the reactor systems. She turned toward the lower bridge windows, overlooking the station interior. Someone redirected security resources intentionally. The realization hit Elias immediately afterward. This isn't containment anymore, he muttered. It was a hunt. Before anyone could respond, Tarn's datapad lit up again with an encrypted priority signal. The Brakari cadet frowned before activating it carefully. A distorted face appeared through heavy static. Human, female, bleeding from the forehead. Cadet Ward, she said urgently. If you can hear this, listen carefully. They know you accessed the Tactical Hall recordings. Military intelligence already authorized your detainment. Elias stepped closer instantly. Who are you? No time. The woman glanced nervously off-screen. Sector 12 isn't a prison block. It's a transfer zone. They were preparing to move the Reapers before the Academy demonstration ever happened. Saran went completely still. They planned public exposure, she realized quietly. To justify mobilization, the woman confirmed. You need to understand this was never about security. Frontier Command has been preparing for a full extermination authority for years. Another violent tremor rocked the station. The woman flinched as distant explosions echoed behind her. You still don't know the worst part, she continued quickly. The creatures weren't captured during raids. Elias' chest tightened. How then? The woman hesitated. Then she answered with visible disgust. They surrendered. Silence crushed the bridge. Even Tarn looked stunned. They approached Coalition outposts peacefully over the last 7 years. The woman continued. Always the same pattern. No attacks. No resistance. They tried to communicate. Her jaw tightened. Every attempt was buried. Lyra shook her head slowly. Why would the Coalition hide that? Because fear is profitable. The woman's image flickered violently. Listen to me carefully, she said. There are surviving young hidden somewhere beyond frontier space. The adults surrendered, hoping the Coalition would spare them. Elias felt cold spread through his entire body. Children. The grief in that cry suddenly became unbearable to think about. The Reapers aren't invading the frontier, the woman whispered. They're searching for the missing survivors. Static exploded across the transmission. Then another voice entered the channel. Cold, authoritative. Trace confirmed. The woman's eyes widened in horror. They found me. The feed cut instantly to black. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Kalis backed away from the group. Slowly, fearfully. No, he muttered. No, this is wrong. This has to be manipulation. Elias turned toward him carefully. Kalis, you heard the broadcast, the silver-skinned cadet snapped. You heard what they said about psychological contamination. They're getting inside your heads. Tarn stepped forward immediately. Calm yourself. But Kalis was already panicking. This is exactly how predators hunt, he shouted. They confuse prey. They make you hesitate. His trembling hand moved toward the emergency wall terminal. Saran's expression hardened instantly. Don't. Kalis ignored her. The second his fingers touched the terminal, the bridge door slammed open behind them. Armed security forces stormed inside, pulse rifles raised. Red targeting lasers flooded the corridor. There! One soldier shouted immediately. Ward is with them. Everything happened at once afterward. Tarn slammed into the nearest soldier, like a freight train, sending armored bodies crashing across the bridge. Lyra yanked Kalis sideways as pulse fire erupted to the corridor in blinding blue flashes. Metal exploded from the walls around Elias, while Saran dragged him toward the lower maintenance hatch. They're not trying to arrest us anymore. Lyra screamed. She was right. The soldiers were firing to kill. Elias barely avoided a pulse round that vaporized the railing beside his head. The bridge shook violently again as somewhere deep below the station, another resonating cry echoed upward. Closer now. The sound hit the soldiers instantly. Several froze mid-attack. Not physically. Emotionally. Elias saw terror flood their faces beneath combat helmets. One dropped his weapon entirely. Another stumbled backward, whispering prayers under his breath. The cry affected them like raw instinct. But Elias felt something completely different. Pain, not his own. A sudden burst of images slammed into his mind so violently he nearly collapsed. Dark corridors. Cold containment chambers. Silver light fading slowly beneath black armor. Small figures hiding together in darkness. Children waiting for someone who never returned. Elias gasped sharply as the vision vanished. The Void Reapers were not rampaging through Kepler Station. They were trying to reach each other. Then the entire station went black again. And this time, something enormous began climbing toward them through the walls. The darkness lasted only 3 seconds. But in those 3 seconds, Kepler Station stopped feeling like civilization. The humming comfort of artificial gravity vanished. Emergency systems died. Ventilation slowed into silence. Somewhere far below the bridge, metal screamed as enormous weight tore through structural supports like paper. Then came the sound, closer than before. A deep resonating cry rolled up with the walls directly beneath them, powerful enough to vibrate the air inside Elias' lungs. The soldiers froze instantly. Several dropped to one knee, clutching their helmets as if the sound itself physically hurt them. Not Elias. For him, the cry carried emotion with terrifying clarity now. Urgency, fear, warning. The emergency lights slammed back online in violent crimson flashes, and the wall exploded inward. The blast threw armored soldiers across the bridge like toys. Metal twisted outward as something massive forced itself through layers of reinforced station plating from the maintenance shafts beyond. Cadets screamed. Pulse rifles opened fire instantly. Blue energy rounds hammered into the darkness. Then the thing stepped fully into the corridor. Every weapon stopped firing, not because the soldiers chose to stop, because fear stole the ability from them. The creature towering inside the ruined bridge entrance made the first Void Reaper seem small by comparison. Its black armored body nearly scraped the ceiling, silver light burning beneath its surface like molten stars trapped inside obsidian stone. Massive fractures of glowing blue energy spread across where its face should have been, pulsing brighter with every breath. But what froze Elias completely was not its size. It was what the creature carried in its arms. A child, small, fragile, wrapped tightly against a giant creature's chest beneath protective, armored limbs. The child's silver light flickered weakly beneath dark skin no larger than a human teenager. The entire bridge fell silent. The soldiers stared in disbelief. This was impossible. Monsters were not supposed to protect children. The massive Void Reaper ignored every weapon pointed at it and moved only one step forward before stopping completely. Its glowing fractures focused directly on Elias. Then the child looked up. For one heartbreaking moment, Elias saw pure terror inside those glowing silver eyes. Not fear of the soldiers. Fear of being found. One of the security officers finally snapped first. "Fire!" he screamed. The bridge erupted instantly. Pulse rounds exploded toward the towering creature from every direction, and the Void Reaper did something nobody expected. It turned its back to the gunfire, shielding the child with its own body. Energy blasts slammed into black armor hard enough to shake the bridge. Silver light burst violently beneath the creature's surface with every impact, but it never retaliated, never attacked, never even raised a hand toward the soldiers. It only protected the child. Elias felt something inside him break completely, because predators did not do that. Not monsters, not killers. Parents did. Stop firing. Elias roared. Nobody listened. The soldiers kept shooting. The child cried out suddenly, a sharp piercing sound unlike the deep resonating cries of the adults. The moment the sound echoed through the bridge, every light across the station flickered again. Then the walls answered. More cries, dozens of them, far below, far above, all across Kepler Station. The soldiers slowly realized the horrifying truth at the exact same moment Elias did. The Reapers were everywhere now, not invading, searching, trying to reach the young before the coalition killed them. The massive creature staggered under continued pulse fire, but still refused to attack. Instead, it looked directly at Elias again, and suddenly the visions hit him harder than ever before. Burning skies, collapsing worlds, smaller Reapers running through smoke, while coalition warships descended from orbit, adults surrendering peacefully, children being dragged away screaming. Then came the final image. Human soldiers, not fighting the Reapers, standing beside them, protecting evacuation ships together beneath the same burning sky. The vision shattered violently. Elias stumbled forward, gasping. Humanity had known them once, not as monsters, as allies. A pulse round suddenly pierced the giant Reaper's shoulder armor. Silver light exploded across the bridge. The creature dropped to one knee, still protecting the child beneath its body. And finally Elias snapped. He stepped directly between the soldiers and the wounded creature. Every rifle immediately swung toward him. "Move aside, Cadet Ward," the officer shouted. Elias didn't move. Behind him, the giant Reaper remained completely still, its glowing fractures locked onto him with visible confusion. "You said they were predators," Elias said coldly. So why is the only thing trying to protect children standing behind me? The officer hesitated, just for a second, but that second changed everything. Because all across the bridge, soldiers had begun lowering their weapons, not out of mercy, out of doubt. They had all seen it. The creature had every opportunity to slaughter them. Instead, it chose to shield a frightened child while being shot repeatedly. The propaganda no longer matched reality, and fear loses power the moment doubt enters the room. Then Admiral Rivos himself appeared on every hollow screen across the bridge. His face was furious. "Cadet Ward," he said with terrifying calm, "step away from the entity immediately." Elias stared at the screens. "No." The single word echoed across the silent bridge. Rivos' eyes hardened. "You are obstructing military containment." "No." Elias replied again, louder this time. "I'm stopping an execution." The Admiral's expression darkened into something colder than anger. "Then you leave me no choice." Suddenly, every hollow screen behind him changed. Star maps appeared, dozens of flashing markers deep in frontier space. And Elias immediately realized what he was seeing. Hidden locations, Reaper sanctuaries, the surviving children. "We found them," Rivos said quietly. "And in precisely 17 minutes, Coalition fleets will begin orbital cleansing operations." The giant Reaper behind Elias released a sound unlike anything heard before. Not rage, not grief, despair. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Elias truly understood what the Coalition had been afraid of all along. Not monsters, witnesses. The bridge stood frozen beneath the crimson emergency lights. Nobody fired. Nobody moved. Admiral Rivos' face towered across every holoscreen, while the countdown clock beside the star maps continued falling second by second. 16 minutes and 42 seconds. 16 minutes and 41 seconds. 16 minutes and 40 seconds. Somewhere beyond the station hull, entire Coalition fleets were already moving toward hidden sanctuary worlds filled with terrified children, and everyone on the bridge knew it. The giant Void Reaper behind Elias lowered its head slowly, clutching the smaller child closer against his chest as it tried to protect it from the countdown itself. Silver light pulsed weakly through cracked armor, where pulse rounds had torn through its body. The creature looked defeated, not because it feared death, because it knew it was too late. Elias felt rage rise through him so fast it almost burned. Not blind anger. The cold kind. The kind humans carried into impossible battles long after fear stopped mattering. "You knew," he said quietly, staring at Rivos' image. "You knew they were intelligent." The Admiral didn't even hesitate. "Yes." The answer hit the bridge harder than any explosion. Several soldiers visibly recoiled. Even Tarn looked stunned. Rivos folded his hands behind his back calmly. "The Coalition discovered the truth nearly 80 years ago. Long before your birth, Cadet Ward. Long before this academy existed." Lyra stared upward in disbelief. "Then why call them monsters?" "Because civilization survives through unity," the Admiral answered coldly. "And unity requires fear." The giant Reaper behind Elias released another low grief-filled sound. Rivos continued speaking over it, without emotion. "When frontier populations fear an external threat, systems cooperate, militaries expand, governments stabilize, economies align." His eyes hardened. The Void Reapers became useful. Silence consumed the bridge. Elias suddenly understood the true scale of the horror. Entire generations had been raised fearing monsters deliberately manufactured by propaganda. Entire species manipulated. Entire worlds unified through lies. And worst of all, the Reapers had known. They had carried centuries of hatred and isolation, while fully understanding why it was happening. Because fear made them valuable. The countdown continued falling. 14 minutes and 3 seconds. 14 minutes and 2 seconds. 14 minutes and 1 second. "Millions will die," Elias said quietly. Rivos nodded once. "A tragic necessity." That sentence shattered the last restraint holding the bridge together. "Necessity?" Tarn roared furiously. Several soldiers lowered their rifles, completely now. Others looked physically sick. Kayla stood frozen near the damaged corridor entrance, staring at the child in the giant Reaper's arms with horrified realization spreading slowly across his face. The propaganda was dying right in front of them, not through speeches, through evidence. The child suddenly looked toward Elias again. Its silver eyes flickered weakly. Then the station lights dimmed once more, not from power failure, from transmission overload. Every hollow screen across the bridge suddenly shifted away from Rivo's image. Then every screen across Kepler Station activated simultaneously. Civilian sectors, military decks, academy halls, every public display flooded with live recordings. The truth, someone had released everything. Unedited footage streamed across the screens in brutal sequence. Coalition forces firing first during Reaper attacks. Peaceful surrender attempts erased from public archives. Captured Reapers dragged into containment while trying to shield younger survivors. And then came the oldest recording of all. Grainy, ancient, human, a battlefield beneath burning skies appeared across every screen. Human soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder beside towering Void Reapers while evacuation ships launched behind them. Civilians fled aboard transports protected by both species together. A human voice crackled through the old recording. They held the line so we could escape. The next image showed fallen Reapers shielding wounded human children beneath collapsing structures. Another voice spoke through static. They're not monsters, they're saving us. The bridge went completely silent. Across the station, Elias could almost feel the psychological shift happening in real time. Fear collapsing, doubt spreading, truth breaking through decades of lies. Rivo's face reappeared abruptly on the screens. Furious now for the first time. Terminate the transmission immediately. Nobody obeyed, because the soldiers on the bridge had stopped listening. One by one, rifles lowered toward the floor. Then something unexpected happened. The giant Void Reaper slowly stepped forward. The soldiers tensed instinctively, but the creature ignored them completely. Despite its wounds, despite the blood-like silver light leaking through cracked armor, it walked carefully toward the central hollow projector, toward the entire galaxy watching. The child remained protected against its chest. Then the creature did something no one expected. It knelt, a species feared for centuries as unstoppable monsters lowered itself slowly before the people who had hunted it across the stars. Not surrender. Trust. The child peeked carefully over the creature's arm toward the watching soldiers, toward the watching galaxy, toward humanity. And suddenly Elias understood the final truth. The Reapers never hid because they feared war. They hid because every time they reached out peacefully, the galaxy answered with extermination. Elias stepped beside the kneeling creature and faced the cameras directly. They told you these beings were monsters, he said steadily. But monsters don't protect children while being shot. Monsters don't surrender for peace. Monsters don't spend centuries hiding instead of fighting back against extinction. The station had become completely silent now. Every word reached millions, maybe billions. They feared them, Elias continued, because they couldn't control them. And they feared humanity for the same reason. Behind him, the giant Reaper slowly raised one massive hand and rested it carefully against Elias' shoulder. Not dominance, not ownership, partnership. The same partnership humanity had forgotten centuries ago. The countdown still flashed across the screens. For minutes and 11 seconds. For minutes and 10 seconds. For minutes and 9 seconds. Then suddenly, the timers froze. All across the hollow screens, Coalition fleet commands began vanishing one by one. Orbital strike authorizations revoked. Military formations disengaging. Civilian protests erupting across nearby systems. And somewhere deep beyond frontier space, hidden sanctuary worlds full of terrified children survive a night by less than 4 minutes. Elias let out a slow breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Around him, soldiers lowered themselves to one knee. Not to the Reapers, to the truth. The giant creature beside him looked upward toward the stars beyond the station hull, silver light pulsing softly beneath wounded armor. For the first time in centuries, its species was no longer alone. And across the galaxy, humanity had just reminded civilization of something it desperately needed to remember. The most dangerous thing in the universe was never the predator. It was the lie.